10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me. This is Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm here with you today, and I hope you're having a great time. This is the No Soundbites Allowed podcast, one of our speed rounds, where we take a single issue and we try and bring it down to a small basis. We'll try and answer everything really quickly, so it won't take long at all. But I do appreciate and thank you for being here. And if you do have any questions, please reach out to us on Twitter at the MV Consult. You can reach out to us in email at info@vossconsult.com. Or, of course, you can reach us on YouTube, on our chat, or on Facebook at the Voss Political Commentary page. So that's a little bit of that. By the way, if you didn't notice, yes, we are going to CPAC. That is the Conservative Political Action Conference. That'll be in D.C., this month, starting on the 27th, going until March 2nd. We will be broadcasting live from there 3 of the days, the entire time that CPAC is going on. We look forward and hope you're going to be there with us. It's going to be exciting. We have about the same type of coverage abilities as Fox News or any of the major news networks, so we're looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to it. And if you have any questions for any of the politicians there that you would like us to ask, please contact us. Let us know what is your question for the elected officials and the pundits that will be at CPAC so that we can ask them when we go. But that's not the reason for why we're here today. Today, yesterday, during the State of the Union, I was invited to an interview with the Exceptional Conservative show. And that's with Ken McClenton, the host, who I've spoken with, and he's actually going to be joining me down at CPAC this year, at CPAC 2019. And so Ken had asked me to come onto his show to talk about New York State, some of the new legislation and laws that have been going on, as well as a lot of the issues about gun control. And we were talking, and it really caught my attention when we were speaking there, because it reminded me of something else. Cliff Crouch, Assemblyman Clifford Crouch, had put out a announcement, a survey, essentially, to his constituents back in January when we saw the gun legislation going forward. And that has garnered about 88% who oppose the new gun laws and 12% that support it. And that's part of the reason why Ken McClenton, with the Exceptional Conservative show, wanted to ask, what's going on in New York State? How are you guys passing these gun control laws, and in particular, the red flag legislation? And so that brought up a question that I want to answer in this episode. So first, let you hear what me and Ken were talking about so that you'll be up to speed. So we'll go right there.
It sounds good on paper. It feels good when someone's preaching that to you on Sunday. It seems reasonable. But when you're going down the street in Brooklyn and someone pulls a gun on you, you're not thinking, you know what? On paper, that gun's not going to hurt me. No. In reality, you have individuals who are dead set on taking your private property and invading your public space and taking away your private rights. And they do it every single day, and they're not necessarily street criminals as much as they are politicians. I wanted to get your thoughts in terms of that.
Well, I've had 2 experiences in life that actually play right into this. One, I've had a gentleman who was on some drug back in the late 90s who actually walked up to me. He was arm's distance away from me when he pulled his gun on me. And that's a very terrifying moment to have to live through. I also here I am in the Southern Tier now, and I had a gentleman on PCP break into my house on a Saturday morning at 5 a.m. And you're waiting for the police to come. Now, in both situations, what are you supposed to do? In the 3 minutes that it took for them to show up, and I bless the Binghamton Police Force, they did a fantastic job, came in force. But in that 3 minutes, if I wasn't prepared and had a plan of action, which included defending myself, who knows what would have happened in that 3 minutes by the time they got here? Again, they could be marking a body. So this is why the Second Amendment is so important. And people don't realize that that's the reality, that you have individuals who are either deranged or on drugs or just bad people that exist out there, and you can't buy them off. It's never going to work. And that's why I don't like the red flag legislation, which gives the government the ability to criminalize a law-abiding 99.999% of all gun owners in the nation, 160 million people who own 350 million guns. In New York State, that's 5 million people, 1 in 4 people in New York State. Not a single problem. We're there to defend ourselves and protect ourselves from others and also a bad government. Yeah. This is what it's for. And they want to then have the ability that because someone said so, they want to be able to take away your gun. Now, here's something about red flags that your listeners should all know about because it's sweeping the nation. I've done about 8 months of research on this. The red flag legislation says that if you have a dangerous weapon, which could be you bought a steak knife, you bought a baseball bat, whatever, that they're able to then go into your home and take away your firearms. Well, guess what? Not only are they going to take away your firearms, they're going to take away your kids. In almost every single state, including New York, there's Child Protective Services. If the police have to notify Child Protective Services because they're coming into your home to take away your firearms. If you're too dangerous to have a firearm in your Second Amendment rights, you're too dangerous to have your kids, the state is taking your children. That is a fact.
You hit on a great point, and it is the unintended consequences for being politically correct.
Now, that's just a portion of the conversation that I had with Ken McClenton on the Exceptional Conservative Show, and I do invite you to go check out the YouTube. I know there's a little bit of a lag between the video and the audio, but you can hear everything we are saying and what we were talking about. And it was very important that we're talking about what's happening with the red flag legislation. Now, because of that conversation with Ken and all of the conversations I've had about red flag legislation and gun control laws and the effectiveness of those gun control laws, are they effective? Are they really going to make anyone safer? Because of all these conversations, I've had a few people ask me, well, Mike, aren't we safer and shouldn't we be safer? Like, let's be more like Europe. Let's be more like the United Kingdom, otherwise known as England. We should have more laws like them. They don't have guns. They don't have the Second Amendment, and they're safer than we are. And we need to be more like that. This is usually the argument we hear from the democratic socialists, the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes of the world, who want to try and make us think that just being somewhere else, if we just copied other people, we'll be safe. Or like with Nancy Pelosi, Speaker Nancy Pelosi, when she says that, if we just get rid of the guns, the crime will go away. That's the answer. We need to take away the guns because the guns are the problem. That's where all the danger is coming from. Well, I decided to take a look at that. And let's really have a conversation, an honest, real conversation about this. And that's what I wanted to do today. So let's start off with, and you may see this, and it may be a little bit hard to see, but you can come back to the video and take a close look at it. This is the Crime in the United States report by the FBI. Comes out every year. The latest version was in 2017. The 2018 numbers have not come out yet. And I went through very specifically. I picked California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, District of Columbia, D.C. itself, Indiana. I picked Illinois, New York, and Texas. Now, you can go to this form and you can see all 50 states and you can look through all the data. But I wanted to pick these states very specifically. California with its Illinois, they have strong gun control there. New York State has this New York SAFE Act. We have District of Columbia, which has been very well known for trying to restrict people from having handguns. So I picked these states very specifically to try and achieve two things. One, to show people states that have a lot of gun control, and because of the numbers that they add up to. See, we're going to compare those 8 states to the United Kingdom, to England itself. And there's a reason for that. A lot of people don't know this. In the United Kingdom, in looking this up for this interview, we found that there's 54.78, or basically just under 55 million people in England at this time. Now, if you were to add that up, that equals exactly, almost exactly, the number of people in California and New York State alone. Okay, so that's the perspective we need to have here. In California, with 39.5 million people, New York State with 19.85 million people, you're talking about 59 million people versus 55 million people in England. That's the realistic thing. Now, the United States obviously has 300 million people. Okay, 330 million people. We're 6 times as large as England. So you would expect that we would have 6 times the rate of violence, 6 times the problems that England has, especially since, and if you're listening to Nancy Pelosi or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or even Governor Cuomo, you would expect that, well, that we're going to see even more than that because we have guns, and guns equal violence. And England hasn't had guns since the 1400s. So, yes, and they had guns in the 1400s and the 1600s. So you must assume that they can't have any guns. Well, I'm going to go through the numbers for you to give you a real sense of what we're talking about here. The 8 states combined plus the city of Washington, D.C., is 118 million people. That is double the number of people, more than double the number of people in all of England. Okay, so we're comparing 8 states, 1 city, compared to the entire nation of England. And we want to check out something there. So what is it we're going to check out? And just to let you really get an idea of the size of it, we're talking about the entire England, Ireland, put it all together, you can fit it inside California. Okay? So this is the comparison. You hear these people say that we should be more like England. We're talking about a nation that is 1/6 the size of the United States, that actually fits inside 1 state in the United States. That's the comparison they're trying to talk about. It's not an apples and pears conversation. But what we do know is, in England, they don't have guns, but they do have knives. And there is a lot of knife crime in there. As you can see in articles from The Guardian, which came out this year, you're talking about knife crime. They were talking about 2018, where they haven't had this much knife crime since 2010. It's been on the rise. If you're looking at the Evening Times, which is a newspaper out of England, I think that's over by Glasgow, the west end of London, you're looking at women who've been attacked by men with hammers and knives. And by the way, just so you understand, there is a lot of violence with knives and hammers in England. And I make that I want to go into that as a point because in the United States, we do count knives and we do count hands, fists, other weapons, which would include hammers in either one of those categories. So we're going to be making an apples to apples, knives versus knives and knives versus guns violence in the United States. And just to make it even simpler, because in the United States, according to the FBI in 2017, there were 905,555 violent crimes that were done with a weapon, any kind of weapon. That could be a hammer, a knife, baseball bat, gun, doesn't matter. To make it absolutely as fair as I possibly could, I compared guns to knives and knives to knives between those 8 states I mentioned and the United Kingdom. And you're going to be a little bit surprised here. But where did I get my numbers from the knives? It came from the House of Commons in England, their report on November 9th of 2018. And in that report, for the year that ended on March 2018, there were 40,100 offenses with knives. So crimes where knives were involved. And very specifically, and you can see in the charts that this is something that's been picking back up since 2014 to the current levels, and it's increased from 2017 to 2018. While that's all very fine and good, and now you can see this, so you can stop the video when you look it back, and you'll be able to see this information. You can look it up for yourself. But on the right hand, you'll see there is, and I'm going to go very specifically to the offenses involving a knife, and in particular that little bit, the second to last thing there is homicides, murders. That's 13%. 13% of the knife crime in England is with a knife or a sharp weapon. Same idea. That means that out of that total, there were 5,213 knife crimes that ended in murder. Basically, someone got stabbed to death 5,213 times in a country that is 1/6 the size of the United States. Now, you have to wonder to yourself, my God, that's a pretty huge number of their violence, of their crime. I mean, that's 1/8 all of their crime is violent crimes with knives. But let's go into the whole thing. When we're looking at this, okay, and we're taking a quick idea of what we're looking at, what we're going to see is that compared to the United States, okay, when you look it over, just with New York and California, the exact same number, actually more people in California and New York than in England, in the United Kingdom, you'll find out that there were a total for the United States of 1,566 murders. That's it. Murders with a firearm. Murders with every firearm, that is a total of 1,566 versus 5,213 with knives in England. If you were just comparing the knives, how many people were killed with knives in England, 5,213 versus California and New York combined, the same population sizes, you would get 371. Okay, so real quick on that, 371 versus 5,213 on the same size population, making it apples to apples, knives versus knives. That's crazy. If you're looking at gun-involved violence, murder, you're looking at 1,566 for California and New York versus the entire knives alone, 5,213. Knives, not having firearms is not making people safer. You being in England, it doesn't mean you're going to be safe because no one has guns, even though people do have guns. They will kill you with knives, and they will kill you more often with knives than if you had guns here in the United States. In fact, if you add up all of the murders for every reason with a weapon in California and in New York State and compare that to the United Kingdom, you will find out that it's half as many. That's right. There are 2,377 total murders with a weapon of any sort versus the 5,213 murders with a knife, people being stabbed to death in the United Kingdom. You are safer in the United States with people with guns than you are in the United Kingdom. It gets worse. Because remember, I looked at 8 states, not just states like California with its gun restrictions, not just New York with the SAFE Act and now red flag laws. I looked at several of the states, and I threw in Texas just for a control because we know Texas is very free, but the rest of them are not. So I looked at it, and we're comparing this again to the official data from the House of Commons for England. Okay, we're looking at their numbers. And so what are we seeing for the UK? If you were to add up all of the states, according to the FBI, if you added up every single one of the states I have on this list and the city of District of Columbia, the DC, Washington, DC, you will find that there were 666 people who were killed with a knife. So 666 people who were stabbed to death versus 5,213 for England. If you looked at guns, the number of people who were killed in all 8 states plus Washington, D.C. is 3,905 versus the 5,213 who were killed with a knife in England. And we're not even counting the hammers. But if you were to look at the total members, and the reason why I actually have 8 states plus Washington, D.C. is because it would take all 8 states plus the city of Washington, D.C. in all murders, adding all types of murders, whether someone got hit with a baseball bat, a brick, someone was strangled to death, they got run over by a car, all forms of murder with a weapon in 8 states plus Washington, D.C. is 5,403 for 2017. That compares to 5,213 knives alone, people murdered with knives in the United Kingdom. Okay, and that means, and just so you understand, those 8 states plus Washington, D.C. is 118 million people. There are only 55 million people in the United Kingdom. You would have to double the population of all of the United Kingdom to be able to get an equal and fair comparison on murders, just comparing their knives versus all total murder in 8 states in the United States. What does this mean? Very simply, not only do we not see a correlation where the 6 to our size is relative to the amount of violence, even though people tell us we're super violent, it's wrong. It's the way they're trying to count. The real numbers are that in America, you are safer. You are safer because, I would like to say because of, but one of the factors is that we are able to arm ourselves and defend ourselves from people with firearms. And that's why our murder rate, I believe, is less when we're making this comparison. And I truly believe that when they tell you that guns are so rampant, that's the root of all evil, and that's what's making it, it's not real. Because if it was, we would see the total number of murders in California and New York exceeding that of the United Kingdom based on the same population, same number of people. It should be equal at the very least. It is not. It is 1/3. When we look at 8 states and a city, a major city, and we add that together, we're doubling the population, which means you would expect maybe 12 times as much violence and death because of firearms. And in fact, it's still roughly about about 60% of the total that we see with knives in the United Kingdom. This tells you, you know what this tells you? Well, first of all of these states, New York State with the SAFE Act, California with its restrictions, Illinois with its red flag legislation and all of its gun restrictions for the city of Chicago, Connecticut, which has had the red flag legislation for the longest of any state in the United States. Guess what? They're not making people safer. They keep promising and promising. You've had in the state of Connecticut, you've been promised that you're not going to see any gun violence, that you're going to get rid of all the guns because of the red flag legislation. It doesn't work. New York State, we were promised that because we had the SAFE Act, that we would see that there would be no more gun violence. People would be safer. It's not true. And in fact, if you look back on the FBI data, you're just as in danger or just as safe as you always were. It doesn't change. It's not the firearm. And in fact, more often than not, I found in much of my data is when you have less ability to protect yourself, you tend to see more violence, more crime, and more people who are hurt or murdered. That's what I tend to see. And when you look at places like England, they got rid of guns. Now they're talking about they need to get rid of knives. And now they're seeing people running around with hammers. It's not the weapon. And it's not what's making people endangered. It's bad people with bad intentions. Whether they're a criminal or mentally deranged, it really doesn't matter. Because all you have to do is just look at the headlines from the UK. They're not hard to find. Instead of knife, put in the word gun. It's the same thing. Instead of hammer, put in gun, and you get the same thing. So in other words, it's not the guns, it's not the knives. You're not going to be safe because of red flag legislation. You're not going to be safe because of gun control laws. You're not going to be safe because some politician is telling you that you don't deserve to be able to exercise your Second Amendment right. No, that's a lie. And I'm showing you the numbers so you can look it up for yourself and see they're not telling you the truth. And that's why they don't mention the numbers, but that's why I just did. But as I said, we're going to make this short. It went a little bit longer because there's a lot more data, but I thank you for checking it out. I look forward to hearing your comments, your thoughts. What do you feel? Always open to hearing from you. And we will be live on Facebook at the Voss Political Commentary. You can go to our page at 12 noon until 1:30, taking your questions, your thoughts, and your comments about everything, including the State of the Union. I look forward to seeing you there. And please keep an eye out for us in our news coming up about CPAC. We're going to be going down there, and we're going to have some more news about that in a press release coming out shortly. But until the next time, I want to say that I thank you. I appreciate you. You are the best audience ever, and I do this because of you guys. So I thank you, and I hope that you're going to have a great day.